Yo, what's up, guys? Just waking up. Time for the pre and post workout preaching sessions. They're back in session, everybody. Been on a little bit of a hiatus. So, what's in the news right now? Well, the top headline is that today's the first day that I've been able to successfully fit the entirety of my hair into one ponytail. Seems as though it's finally long enough, folks. It's a momentous occasion. But for some odd reason, we do not see this on the headlines like we should. What we do see is we see Mark Zuckerberg. We see things about Martin Luther King Jr. We see things about Donald Trump and his threats on the Russian government and how they are protecting Syria. So, now, this is all kind of related. I'm going to kind of dive deep into the politics of all of this real quick. I'm going to start with the Mark Zuckerberg thing. And the whole issue with sharing information and the privacy of ourselves and, the enforcement of social norms and what's socially acceptable. I think that the greater injustice is to try and force people to be just. I think that the greater injustice is to say that people do not have the choice to choose what favorite color is their own on the entirety of the color wheel. I think that life itself is based upon being something which allows people to possibly bully other people. As soon as there's a force involved trying to control and manipulate people to being something which is very, mild-mannered within society and obeying what we deem proper society to be, I think that at that point in time, we have taken a wrong turn towards creating a utopian society. Right? The whole argument goes back to things such as 1984, where we see, this whole manipulative force trying to regulate the psychology of peoples. And I just think that it's a very wrong way to go about it. I think that a byproduct of freedom is that these things are going to occur. And I think that it is a much less, greater evil, so to speak. Pick the best of two evils, right? That's the common saying. If we ourselves look at the side effects of freedom and of free thinking and of free peoples, and we look at something such as the Constitution, which is cited a lot in these cases, the pursuit of happiness. A lot of people have a very, malignant or kind of sinister or, cynical viewpoint in regards to what makes them happy. And, do they not have the right to pursue their own form of happiness? That's why, then all of a sudden we have to say that these constitutional ideals are just that, they're ideals. You can't necessarily take these things written in the Constitution literally, because as soon as we do, all of a sudden we've introduced personality and opinion into these things. And if we take those to the utmost of extremes, then yes, we cannot enforce and inflict rule upon, the bullies in the school, because that's just a byproduct of freedom. And this goes back kind of like for a minute here, especially in the United States, where we have certain peoples not feeling like they're being respected. Well, why are you forcing your way into a place that you know that you're not respected? Obviously you have a title And so obviously there was some people that respected you very highly. Otherwise, why would you have been given the title? So why are you forcing yourself into this area in which there is controversy and uprising for the sake of controversy? Is that what you're seeking after? And I'm kind of a big fan of true evil ends up destroying itself through a natural cause. And I had this discussion with my brother the other day, and then he brings up the point, and I thought it was a good point, that maybe the fact that these people were seeking to end the controversy in these controversial environments was the natural extension of these entities coming to their end through them being something very maleficent in regards to their interactions, with the people of society. But like I said before, I think that, as soon as we start manipulating the whole to encompass a society which does not allow for there to be bullies in school, and, I think every single person has been picked on. There's been people that have been pulled over. Whatever your background is, whatever it is that you look like, or, whatever, for going under the speed limit. Like, if we are to be realistic here, like, I'm positive that it's happened for pretty much every people's, and in the school system, peoples get bullied for nothing, like bigger than wearing stupid shoes. That's what other people think, right? And then so a social justice warrior will come out and say, we need to stop all this action. Well, you know what? How are you going to stop all that action? I think that you're teetering on a fine line here, where how are you going to stop these human behaviors? Because to give no one the right to hate someone else, I think, is a greater injustice than allowing people to hate. Because how are you going to enforce that human psyche? How are you going to enforce that rule? I mean, I don't think that you can without inflicting a greater justice, because then all of a sudden you're going to have to be real sneaky and clever and start, socially conditioning people from a young age. And I think that a lot of that already goes on anyways in our society, right? We're pretty much socially conditioned, and there are a lot of things that I think that are in place that aren't necessarily so maniacal or so psycho-subversive from the forms of government and their interactions with the youth, and participating in the growth of the youth to adulthood, such as social conditioning with programming and books and other forms of technology and education, right? But as soon as you start having to implement all of these very, very in-depth plans to coerce people to follow the structure of law and rule, then all of a sudden we're entering into a category of, we're committing greater injustice than, the end goal here, to create a just and regulated and ruled society. And just, the means to the end do not justify the end, so to speak. And that's all that I want to say on that. Now, the data mining thing. So it's super, super odd. And I don't necessarily think that Mark Zuckerberg is the prime person to blame here. I think there are a lot of companies that are participating in this. He's just the one that's in the spotlight right now because he's kind of been picked, out of everybody, because he is a public figure. And if a lot of these other figures, which were in charge of these other forms of social media, social interaction, were up on stage, nobody would even, bat an eye, because they don't know who this person is. He's a public figure, and so people recognize him, so it's easy to associate him with this certain thing. But for example, the other day I was sending messages with somebody about something, and this is through the native app on my iPhone, right? Just the messaging app itself. And then all of a sudden, I start receiving advertisements for whatever it was that we're talking about. And I know that this is data mining. So this is data mining that's going on, on a very broad range of applications. There's no way that I would have received, advertising for just this topic, non-general item, very focused, very specific. There's no way that I would have received an advertisement for this thing. But that being said, there's data mining going on all over the place. Now, to a certain degree, one can say that, this is a beneficial thing because it allows me to discover things that I myself would have never been able to do if people weren't trying to intertwine their business interests with my own interests. Because it's saying, hey, Austin likes this, he likes this, he likes this, well, let's show him this, right? And it's coming across a huge, broad range of my interactions with electronics, literally anywhere I go, because I sign in here, I sign in there, or whatever, you know what I mean? And now we have facial recognition, which is just a normal, day-to-day thing. And who's to say that these things aren't being applied elsewhere, right? And then so I don't even have to sign in anywhere. Like, literally it just recognizes my image and all of a sudden kind of catalogs what it is I'm doing, and then it's just pretty much broadcast throughout, the collection of my permanent records, so to speak, right? I'm not necessarily saying that that's going on, but I do know for a fact that there is a lot of other data mining that is going on, and you can go from place to place to place, and a lot of it just is based upon your own personal interests. Obviously, I am searching out these things wherever I go, so I'm going to be coming across similar things, to that degree. But there is a lot of the data mining going on where, I sign into Netflix over here, or I watch all these Netflix, I watch these YouTube, I watch this, I get messages through Facebook, I get messages on my, app on my phone, through other different apps as well. And then, it's just like the data mining on like another level above my own, because then all of a sudden it's targeting the group, the demography that I myself fall into, the demographics. And so it's not necessarily like individualized data mining, the level above, just data mining my own personal apps that I'm signed in on, but it's, target marketing the demographics that I'm in. Now, there's problems with this as well, though, because then all of a sudden we have kind of the same thing come into play that I was just talking about previously in this video, and that is kind of like this psycho-subversive manipulation of the populace and of consumers, and just this really like sadistic like mind game going on here, where it's like there's no personal connections with anybody anymore. Like, even politicians, all they do is look up the stats for specific places. They know exactly what to talk about. They know, the general feel of an area without even knowing the people. And it's this really like non-connected way for us to be connected. And it's in a lot of ways just a very intrusive, way to probe other people's lives and to think that you know them when, in reality you really don't, because we're different people. Wherever it is that we go, we're different people. Who I am around, I'm a different person. What I'm doing makes me a different person in that environment and all this different stuff. So to think that I'm the same person here as I am over there is not true. And all of these issues and topics kind of tie into one another, because we're going to get into the Trump, Syria, Russia thing here in a minute. And it's all kind of falling back upon like this non-invasive, non-intrusive, way and outlook in life. Like, should I try and force my opinion on the rest of the world? And at what point in time do I myself hold short from trying to, like invasively pretty much data mine? I can argue for the sake of it's for the benefit of everybody else, but at what point in time does this become something which, oversteps my bounds, so to speak, right? We can look back to early American policy, which was pretty much don't give a fuck about anybody else other than America. That's pre-World War type shit right there. World War I. And that's kind of the policy that America had for the longest of times, and the most famous saying was, do not go out and look for foreign beasts. Like, a lot of these international peoples who are very aware of America now, they they kind of don't necessarily realize, because it's beyond their own time, that America used to be something which was very, non-interactive with foreign parties and political parties. Like, they did a lot of trade deals, came out on top with a lot of different trade deals, but they pretty much stayed out of all the other policy. Like, if we were to even talk about this whole Syria thing with somebody like John Quincy Adams or something like that, like, they would say, like, that's not our issue. Like, let's stay within our own lands over here, because the more we go out and look for monsters, the more monsters that we're going to see and find, and there's no shortage of monsters, and they actually had a lot of the same, I guess, goals and ideals that I myself said earlier, where it's like, at what point in time does it become unjust to go out and enforce justice on every single person? The byproducts of freedom are that a lot of people are going to do these sinister actions, but those byproducts and those side effects are the lesser evil of going out and trying to enforce rule of freedom, right? If you enforce rule of freedom, is it truly freedom? But if we kind of take a step out of our shoes and look at the bigger picture here, then what we see is that by allowing there to be like these lesser evils, we're allowing a greater freedom to actually exist. And it's sad, because you kind of have to like turn an eye, so to speak, to a lot of these things going on. But that was the policy that they used to have, and anybody can look this up online. You can just go into Google, if you're not afraid of all of a sudden being associated with very, very, very conservative ideals. These are ideals that the modern conservative wouldn't have, because, supposedly the modern conservative is all pro-war, but that's because, at the turn of the century, all of a sudden it was a huge economic boom to be involved in war, right? And then we have the whole, conspiracy paradigm associated with actually pretty much funding war for the sake of economical interests, rather than actually going to war for the benefit of the people. And one could argue that, well, it's for the benefit of the people because, economic interest is obviously associated with the well-being of a population. So, you know what I mean? There's always a way to justify it and rationalize it in your mind, But yeah, so this whole like Syria type thing, like, I watched something very, I guess, inspirational the other day, and it was like this talk show that included the youth from all these different populations, all these different countries. And I think in a lot of ways they were right. They said, we shouldn't look at how these governments are interacting and fighting with each other, because personally I harbor no ill will towards, when I go to these places and see these people. You know what I mean? But for some reason, it's these people in positions of power which have the opportunity to lose their power, which control the population's, I guess, emotions by bombarding the population with all of these news articles and media and biased paintings and pictures and portrayals of everybody, because it's, in the best interest of their business. And then one could say, well, their business is our business because it's a trickle-down effect. But, I harbor no ill will when I travel to a lot of these different places, and I'm welcomed and opened and received with, open arms, as long as I myself do the same with everybody and such things. And in a lot of ways, I think that people forget that, even though there are no longer a lot of the monarchy systems set up, I do think that there are still definitely bloodlines and kind of blood feuds and kind of like family feuds that are going on internationally, because power is something which is inherited, because people born into these positions are naturally growing up in this environment, and they're much more likely to, kind of maintain that environment because that's what they were brought up in. It's something which is scientifically supported. The socioeconomic class which you are brought up in is one in which you are more likely to maintain, because that's the life that you're used to. And also you are receiving the benefits of that lifestyle all throughout your life. So you already have an inherent advantage over everybody else being born in lesser situations. And so what happens is all this power becomes an inherited trait, pretty much. Like, to say that wealth and the extension of job and everything like that isn't necessarily within our genes is kind of like, it's a correlation. It may not necessarily be a cause, but obviously it is something which is definitely correlated. You know what I mean? Like, you could take somebody which isn't obviously, a blood related relative and stick them in one of these families and have every single party be, double blinded as to the notion that this isn't necessarily their child, and they would inherit all the rights of this thing, if they believed that it was their child and all this other stuff. We could get into some, something like that and say, so obviously it's not, within the genes or whatever, you know what I mean? But who knows? Maybe it really is, because to a certain degree, all of our psychology and everything like that is coded within ourselves, and for the ability for these people to perform generationally within these different facets and areas and policies, and entities within their lives, may be something which more people are apt toward doing based upon them finding people which are also very suited in these environments and passing on. All of a sudden you have specific traits of people which are very emphasized throughout, these different factions generationally. Right? And so I could very rationally explain away the fact that, yes, a lot of these positions of power may be to do with the type of people, and there's a subpopulation of people on the planet which actually inherit, the right to rule, so to speak, because it's in their genes. Well, yeah. Do we ourselves go and enforce bad parenting upon all the other households in our neighborhood? I think it's hard to, stare upon injustices and not, take action ourselves. And at what point in time do we say that if true injustice is going on, it will naturally weed itself out? At what point in time do we ourselves have to see ourselves as a part of that natural weeding out process and say, it's no longer a thing that's confined to the household and the area. It's literally kind of seeping out from the house and, having negative effects on the entire cul-de-sac or the entire, city or the entire nation or the world, because we're a part of it, and we want to make a better world for everybody. But at what point in time do we have to realize that part of what makes humanity is allowing people to see and act in different ways, and to not necessarily say that everybody should see the world in the same way and that everybody should like the same color? Because if we were trying to create some harmonious society, then just put a chip in everybody's head and have them be programmed to not act out of line. What's the greater injustice? Enforcing justice or allowing freedom to be? And in either case, when do we ourselves fall into the injustice? By either not allowing injustice to be, or by enforcing justice, by saying that things will naturally fix themselves, or by disassociating ourselves with the natural process and not participating in the natural weeding out process of things which are unjust. All right, everybody, done with the pre-workout preaching session. So yeah, I don't think that we can expect everybody to like us, and to try and force everybody to like us is definitely an incorrect way to go about life. But at what point in time should we ourselves work towards having everybody else welcome us in open arms? Because obviously, if they aren't, then at what point in time do we take the actual judgments of society into our opinion and say maybe I should change my ways and behavior because obviously I'm receiving negative feedback in an extreme manner. And at what point in time is this feedback obviously something of a bullied characteristic, or is it actually true in the fact that I myself should change for the betterments of society? But at what point in time do I lose my individuality and I merely just become a part of the whole and lose a sense of opinion? Time for the post-workout preaching session. Just finished my exercise and did something kind of cool today. I ended up logging into the machine and like recording all of my exercise information, at least on one of the machines I used, and kind of logged all that on Facebook. It's kind of weird, all the stuff going down. You know, Facebook ended up sending me a survey this morning, gauging, you know, Facebook's actual quality within the world. And I left a positive response, other than, you know, I did leave some comments as to, I think there's a lot of other websites which are ridiculed for the content that's on the website, such as YouTube, where they're actually implementing a Wikipedia, you know, correlation to videos that are controversial. And, you know, there's a lot of these Facebook videos that go around which are definitely misinformation, and they're extremely biased. They don't compare apples with apples, you know, if that's possible, but it's a good thing to try to compare, you know, an apple to something which is most similar to it, other than these very, you know, extravagant and hairy and just biased comparisons that are obviously compared that way and put in portrayal that way to support your bias agenda, whether that be something, you know, motivation by like some economic or political interest or emotional interest or what have you. It's definitely not correct when you kind of take yourself out of the picture and look at the world at whole and look at the statistics and the best comparisons possible. It's definitely biased. But, you know, I've been able to stay in touch with a lot of friends over the years that, speaking with previous generations, were not able to do so, you know? And so it's been a huge participating factor in my life in those regards. I can kind of log on and get in touch with whoever it is that I want to from, you know, my past very easily. But yeah, I kind of shared my exercise on there. It's the first time I did that. Kind of neat. Gonna go and, you know, get the rest of my day on with after getting all this stuff out of the way. Like, it's funny, it's like, you know, I say I get this stuff out of the way, but it's such an ingrained part of the day itself, you know. It's like later in the day, it's like, oh man, I feel so motivated. It's like I see sometimes old pictures of myself and it motivates me to like say, hey dude, go and kick your ass. And it's like later in the day, but then I'm like, I can't go to the gym this late, otherwise it's gonna cause like, you know, negative repercussions for the next day. And it's just like I'm motivated when like I shouldn't be. You know what I mean? It's hard to get that motivation and get this stuff done and out of the way with, you know, in the morning. And then all this other political stuff, it's honestly, I feel like a good thing to get that all out of the way with early in the morning, even though it does take another, you know, little extra step of effort to kind of peruse through all that stuff and then voice your opinion on all of it and then get it out of your mind so that it's not constantly bombarding your thoughts throughout the day. But that is another extra step, but doing so definitely allows you to, or at least me, to enjoy the rest of the day. But hey, you know what I mean? Like, if that's what you enjoy doing for the day, then why get it out of the way? It's kind of like me at the gym. It's like sometimes I can spend the whole day there. I'll just eat there, you know, like go and order some stuff at like the supplement place and, you know, grab a couple shakes, chill out for a minute, you know, watch some TV, I don't know, play some chess or whatever, you know, just spend like the whole day there. Kind of like my safe haven, you know, like at the exercise facility. And some people are that way in regards to politics and current events. It's the same thing, because there's no shortage of that, you know what I mean? Like, I covered 3 topics today, which kind of collapsed into one overarching idea, but all of those split into their own individual topics when we're trying to discuss relative ways at actually implementing some sort of realistic goal toward finding solutions to these problems. So anyways, for the exercise today, just kind of did a full body exercise, hit the bag, warmed up, did this thing like I was talking about previously where I ran through like Bali, India, and watched on screen street view and then shared the exercise via Facebook. Did some pull-ups, did some leg extensions diagonal while being pulled up on some pull-up bars, did some ball exercises, so yeah, then some bands as well, just to kind of keep that minor muscle groups engaged. A lot of people focus on those major muscle groups, but they neglect the support that those major muscle groups need to function. So yeah, kind of light, but the weather's getting nice, and the nicer the weather gets, the less time I'm going to be spending inside and the more time I'm going to be spending outside. So I plan on spending a lot of time outside today, so I didn't want to kill myself in the gym right now and kind of neglect the opportunity for me to go and enjoy outside for a minute. So anyways, everybody, that's it for the day. Peace out.